School shootings have occurred throughout history, though most only remember the 1990s on. Even then, most people, when asked for the first big school shooting, they will report Columbine. But most Oregonians remember events that happened almost a year prior in Thurston, Oregon. Hey all, and welcome back to another episode of There's Danger Here. I'm Leilani, and this is the case of Kipland Kinkel. Kipland, or Kip Kinkel, was born on August 30th, 1982, to parents Bill and Faith Kinkel. Kip is the younger of two, with an older sister, Kristen. Kip grew up in Springfield, Oregon. However, both Bill and Faith were Spanish teachers and actually uprooted the entire family to Spain for a year. At this time, Kristen was in 5th grade while Kip was entering kindergarten. Kip reportedly had difficulty integrating, as his teacher only spoke Spanish. Kristen had issues too. She was actually put in a different grade because there was only one English-speaking teacher. But she seemed to integrate a little bit better. But problems didn't seem to get much better upon their return to Oregon. Kip repeated 1st grade, apparently owing to his lack of maturity and slow emotional development. In 2nd grade, Kip's parents had him tested for a disability, but he scored in the 90th percentile for intelligence. Still, the tester noticed it appeared that he had to have difficulty with his hand motor skills and would become frustrated and anxious when attempting to do things such as write. Problems with reading and writing continued into 3rd grade, and so his parents insisted he get retested. The second time he qualified for special education services, even though Kip excelled in math. By 4th grade, Kip was officially diagnosed with a learning disability owing to his continued issues with reading and writing. But on the other hand, was in the talented and gifted program for math and science because he was well above average. Up to this time, all of his teachers reported he had no disciplinary issues. In 7th grade, Kristen was out of the house and off to college. The same year, Kip and his friends ordered, quote, How to Build Bombs, end quote, books, but they were caught by Faith. 8th grade, Kip was caught shoplifting with friends. The same year, he bought a sawed-off shotgun from a friend and hid it in his bedroom. It was around the same time, at age 13, Kip would later tell others that he started hearing voices. First 1, then 3. All of them were males, with a hierarchy in his own mind. They told him to kill everyone. They would also degrade and belittle him. But he didn't think anyone would believe him, so he kept it to himself. After a while of hearing them, his ideas started to morph. He stated, quote, I believed that the Disney Corporation was working in conjunction with the U.S. government, and they had planted a chip in my head, and so the voices were coming from this chip, end quote. As the voices persisted, he became fixated on the idea that the Chinese were going to invade the West Coast. Quote, and I became obsessed with obtaining weapons, not just guns, but knives and explosives, end quote. On January 4th, 1997, Kip and a friend ventured over to a highway overpass in Bend, Oregon. Instead of partaking in the snowboarding clinic they decided throwing rocks off the overpass would be a better idea. They were arrested after a rock went through a passerby's windshield. Kip was charged for the offense, then referred to the Department of Youth Services in Eugene. Bend police called Kip's parents, who made the 2-hour drive over at approximately 11:40 p.m. in order to pick up Kip and bring him home. 16 days later, Kip was in front of a psychologist at the behest of his parents. Dr. Jeffrey Hicks diagnosed Kip with major depressive disorder and concluded that, quote, Kip had difficulty with learning in school, had difficulty managing anger, some angry acting out, and depression, end quote. While he continued with Dr. Hicks, he also had to see a psychologist through the Skipworth Juvenile Facility due to his issue in Bend. Dr. John Crumbly did the intake with the entire family. After a single interview, concluded that Kip was remorseful for his actions that occurred, maintaining that it was the second boy that actually completed the action of throwing the rock. Apparently, in the interview, Kip cried and wanted to know if everybody was okay. Dr. Crumley recommended 32 hours of community service, an apology letter, and to pay for the damages to the victim's car. Meanwhile, Kip started opening up to Dr. Hicks, telling him he felt depressed at times, not suicidal, and later he would go on to say that this was kind of accidental as he was just sort of rambling on, but he didn't actually mean to tell his psychologist really anything. He did tell him he had a fascination with explosives, and Kip reported that even while he was under Dr. Hicks' care, like I said, he refused to say anything about the voices he was hearing for fear of being labeled as, quote, retarded, end quote. Then, in April 1997, trouble crept into school. Kip received his first suspension on April 4th after he kicked a fellow classmate in the head. According to Kip, the boy pushed him first. The suspension lasted 2 days. But shortly after, he was suspended again, this time for 3 days, for throwing objects at classmates. By June 1997, Dr. Hicks had Kip on 20 milligrams of Prozac, as Kip accidentally told him that he thought eating was a chore. Weeks later, there was a noted improvement on Kip's eating and temperament. On June 27, 1997, Bill took Kip to the store where they purchased a 9mm Glock 19. According to court documentation, quote, the understanding between them was that Kip would do the research on which model gun he wanted and would pay for it with his own money. He was not to use the gun without his father present, and the gun would not become Kip's until he turned 21 years old. End quote. By July 30th, Kip and his family reported that Kip was doing well, and they actually discontinued therapy services at this time. Unfortunately, it was about the same time that Kip's prescription for Prozac finished, and it just simply wasn't renewed. Again, according to Kip, Bill bought the gun around this time in order to go target shooting with Kip as a way to bond. And in this area, there's a lot of gun knowledge, so it's not really out of pocket for, fathers and sons to do this type of activity. Nothing about this would seem alarming except for the fact that Kip was just put on an antidepressant, which should have been a red flag. Kip also later goes on to say that he thought because he was doing better on the Prozac that he didn't have to continue. It was one of those medications that you take only when you're not feeling well, and then it fixes it rather than a lifelong prescription. But again, this is according to Kip, so truth, untruth, maybe just a story. Some of it's hard to tell. Sometime during the summer, Kip managed to buy a .22 pistol. Sources don't specify brand or anything else, but it was from a friend, another gun he kept hidden from his parents. In the fall of 1997, Kip entered Thurston High School as a freshman. There, friends say he was doing well, and he was even personally invited to join the football team by the coach. It appears as though Kip was feeling like he was doing well enough, again, so he didn't need the medication, Prozac. On September 30th, 1997, Bill buys Kip another gun. This time, it's a .22 rifle. Around the same time, Kip gives a speech in class, and his subject is, quote, how to make a bomb. End quote. But again, this isn't suspicious. There's a lot of reports out there that this was like a wild class of reports. So there was one on, how to properly do suicide, things like that. Like there was just kids making some outlandish speeches. And so this came across as rather mild when compared to some of the other ones that were given in this class. On March 24th, 1998, Kip and a friend watched the Jonesboro school shootings on TV and reported that it was cool. On May 20th, Kip acquired another gun, a .32 stolen from the father of one of his friends. On that day, Kip went to school and exchanged the money for the gun that, of course, was loaded at the time. Meanwhile, Scott Keeney, the father whose gun was stolen, called the school and notified that it was stolen and he believed it was taken by one of his son's friends. Police came and spoke with the friend group, and that eventually led to Kip. Kip admitted to having the gun after buying it off of Corey Ewart. The gun was found in his locker, and the boys were both suspended pending expulsion for their act. According to PBS, quote, Kip was brought to the police station. He was fingerprinted, photographed, and charged with possession of a firearm in a public building and the felony charge of receiving a stolen weapon. Detective Al Warthen interviewed him. According to Warthen, Kip was very upset and worried about what his parents were going to think. He was scared about what was going to happen to him. Soon after, Bill picked up Kip from the police station and brought him home. End quote. Then, everything unravels. Kip reported that his father took him home, getting Burger King on the way. But after he ordered Burger King, he actually went to the vehicle to eat without him. Kip pretended to eat, threw out his burger, and also went to the vehicle. First, when they got home, Kip moved his guns to the attic so that his parents wouldn't find them if they searched his room. But here, Kip says that the voices really persisted, and he felt like he couldn't fight them anymore. Around 4 p.m., according to Kip's confession, quote, grabbed the .22 rifle from his room, got ammunition from his parents' room, went downstairs and fired one shot to the back of his father's head. Kip then dragged his body into the bathroom and covered it with a sheet, end quote. About a half hour later, the college where Bill worked called because he was missing a class that he was supposed to be teaching at. Kip said he would be out due to family troubles. Right after that, Kip made a conference call. For those who don't know, it's a 3-way call so that you can talk to multiple people on a landline. He spoke with friends Tony McCown and Nick Hyacin, telling them he didn't know the gun was Keeney's. During the call, he stated that he was worried about what others would think of what he did, and his parents would be so embarrassed. Continuing stating, quote, it's over. Everything's over. It's done. Nothing matters now, end quote. According to Tony, Kip kept asking, quote, where's my mom? When is she going to be home? End quote. That throughout the call, he'd say he was worried, and then he would switch to being angry, and then he would cry and be worried again. 2 hours later, at approximately 6:30 p.m., Faith came home. Kip met his mom in the garage. Again, according to his confession, he told her he loved her. Then he shot her twice in the back of the head, 3 times in the face, and 1 time through the heart. He dragged her body across the garage floor and covered her with a sheet. But Kip isn't done yet. The next day, May 21st, 1998, at 7:30 a.m., Kip left his house wearing a long trench coat and backpack. The backpack held ammunition along with a .22 Ruger rifle, a .22 Ruger pistol, and the 9mm Glock pistol. Kip also taped a hunting knife to his leg. He then got into his mother's car and drove to school, parking a block away, and then he walked down a path, even taking a shortcut past the tennis courts to get to school. School cameras picked him up as he entered the school at 7:55 a.m. Kip walked down a hallway towards the cafeteria, seeing a group, and after he recognized one of them, he actually told them to stay away from the cafeteria. It is that acknowledgement that really has me question the validity of the voices in his head. He was so distraught by the voices that he lost control and killed his parents. Somehow has the wherewithal to tell a friend to stay out of the cafeteria, and then, you'll see, he goes back to blindly attacking people. That part will never make sense. Because as he headed to the cafeteria, he shot Ben Walker and Ryan Attaby, killing them both, continuing to fire a 50-round clip from one of the .22s and one from the 9mm as he entered the cafeteria. Kip also shot and killed Michael Nicholson. 5 classmates ended up wrestling Kip to the ground, but not before another 25 people were injured. Officer Dan Bishop arrived minutes later to the classmates holding Kip down. Kip is immediately arrested and taken to the police station. As Detective Al Warthen arrives, he realizes Kip is the same kid who was brought to the station the day prior for having a gun at school. Kip was placed in an interview room, and while Detective Worthen left to set up the photo equipment, he returned to find Kip pulling out the hunting knife taped to his leg and rushed the detective, purportedly screaming, quote, "Kill me, shoot me," end quote. But the detective got the door shut, so Kip attempted to use the knife to slit his own wrists. The movement was limited as he was handcuffed, but this did allow police to re-enter the room with additional personnel, use pepper spray, and get the knife away from Kip. And that just speaks to the level of, I'm not going to say incompetence, but I think they were looking at a kid and didn't think to pat him down, because that's one of the first things you do, and they should have found that knife in the first place. At 9 a.m., Kip has reread his Miranda rights, and he stated he understood. Then Detective Worthen asked how Kip's dad is, to which Kip told the detective that he murdered his parents. While police head to the Kinkel home, Detective Worthen photographed Kip in order to document his condition. As he removed his clothing to shower, Kip had masking tape in an X holding a .22 and a 9mm bullet, telling Worthen that he taped them in case he ran out of ammunition and needed to use the final 2 bullets to kill himself. So again, these should have been found during a pat-down, as they are anomalies. But they weren't. By 9:30 a.m., police were at the Kinkel home. There, they found opera music from the soundtrack of Romeo and Juliet. And we're talking the 90s Romeo and Juliet here, playing. Hundreds of rounds of .22 were all over the living room floor. As police searched, they found a potential live bomb and ended up having to evacuate the house. Several explosive devices were eventually found and taken away, where they were detonated. In addition, a stash of inactive bombs were located in the crawl space under the porch. So needless to say, after he murdered his parents, it doesn't sound like he was sitting at home idly by or just waiting for school to start. He was planning to kill more people through this use of bombs in his home. The next day, Kipland Kinkel was charged with 4 counts of aggravated murder. On June 16, 1998, Kip was indicted on a total of 58 felony counts, 4 of which were for aggravated murder. By September 24, 1999, a plea agreement was reached in which Kip pled guilty to 4 counts of murder and 26 counts of attempted murder. And it is really hard to figure out what this plea deal was all about, because you'll see after sentencing, it doesn't come light. And it's hard to say that they would have gone for the death penalty here, because he was a 15-year-old, although he can be charged as an adult because of the level of crimes. So they might have been trying to prevent the death penalty. Because on November 2nd, 1999, Kipland Kinkel went to court for sentencing. After hours of victim impact statements, Kip spoke. He stated, quote, "I have spent days trying to figure out what to say. I have crumpled up dozens of pieces of paper and disregarded even more ideas. I have thought about what I could say that might make people feel just a little bit better. But I have come to the realization that it really doesn't matter what I have to say, because there is nothing I can do to take away any of the pain and destruction I have caused. I absolutely loved my parents and had no reason to kill them. I had no reason to dislike, kill, or try to kill anyone at Thurston. I am truly sorry that this has happened. I have gone back in my mind hundreds of times and changed one detail, one small event, so this would never happen. I wish I could. I take full responsibility for my actions. These events have pulled me down into a state of deterioration and self-loathing that I didn't know existed. I am very sorry for everything I have done and for what I have become." End quote. After that, he was sentenced to 111 years without the possibility of parole. He remains incarcerated in Oregon. And while he doesn't do many interviews, he has done a select few but reports say that he still feels nervous about them. Kip stated, quote, "I have responsibility for the harm that I caused when I was 15, but I also have responsibility for the harm that I am causing now as I'm 38 because of what I did at 15." End quote. And overall, he is noted to be like one of the honor prisoners. I couldn't see any reports, or I haven't ever heard of any reports of Kip getting into fights, doing it, having any issues. He did start out in juvenile um, facilities when he was 15 up until he was 25, and then he was transferred to the adult prisons, which is where he remains at this time. Again, like I said, he doesn't really like to do interviews because he doesn't want the spotlight on him and what he's done, actually. He thinks that it should be more towards the victims. At least that's what he said in the limited amount of communications he's had with people. He is in appeals right now, it sounds like. He's trying to appeal his sentence because he was sentenced to such a large number of years, that 111, which still equals to life without parole, essentially, which many states are getting away from such large sentences for juveniles. And so we will see if he gets any reduction of time, if that would even matter, or if it would, drop down to 75 years, which still means that he has many more to go. Um, so that is ongoing. And Monkey, I hope I did this justice. And to all those out there listening, be careful. It's a dangerous world we live in.